And then so I don't go. Yeah, and everybody wants to be my.
No, I don't know. I don't know if it's recording or not though.
Yeah, I've got that sign off. Coming from all angles.
You can escape if you want. We can go reset.
But yeah, it's just a nice.
Yeah, go to stop share for a second. Oh, it is recording. Okay. People just heard. I can really edit that out.
You are very tech savvy.
Oops, not what I wanted. Present. Okay, whenever you're ready.
Okay, I think Monica just went to the bathroom. I have a few more people out.
What time did it
Yeah, I'm gonna try to go fast. So I think 45 minutes. Okay, so that's 12:15.
And then don't forget to turn your mic back on.
Oh, yeah.
Slide it up, yeah.
We were done about how we were gonna be really late. I
Told you it was here.
That's what I said. She said, she was like, I'm glad, because I said, I'm glad I got to, you know, initially. For some reason in my head, I was like, I should double check that. Because I was like, oh, somebody's in here like 9 o'clock.
If it hadn't been for me actually helping set up this morning, I would.
Okay, I think I'm gonna get started. I think I know everybody, but my name is Lauren Broderick. I'm the volunteer coordinator here at CASA. And just to kind of tell you a little bit of my history, we moved here from Phoenix about a year ago. It'll be a year in July. And I previously worked at another nonprofit that worked with women who are in crisis. And so we saw a lot of different instances of women who are exposed to domestic violence, poverty, just different types of trauma. And we were just there as kind of a source of support. So we had a mentorship program, and we also had life skills classes as well. And so the organization itself really built long-term relationships with women and just kind of serving in a hard space with them. And through working at that organization, I was exposed to trauma-informed care. And it has been a journey that has continued. And we talk a lot about trauma-informed care at CASA, and it has become a passion of ours to really have this model at the top that we're implementing these principles of trauma-informed care at a staff level, and that trickles down to our volunteers, and then trickles down to the families that we serve and the kiddos that we serve. So this training that I'm going to go over today was really birthed out of a really great conversation that I had with CASA. She's been with us for a few years now, and she has just developed a really strong bond and relationship with the family that she's been working with. So she fell in love with this child, fell in love with her mother. The family is now, they're in a trial home visit, but they're strongly, they're going to be reunified, and that's how the case will close. But through this relationship that she has developed with mom, just this mentorship-like relationship has developed. And she was just kind of talking to me one day and asking some questions. She's like, you know, as mom and child have reunified, there's just some things that kind of come up. One was this mom is really working hard to like gain employment, get a child, you know, back enrolled in preschool and all of those things. But mom was frequently becoming overwhelmed, which we know just as parents, or, you know, just with jobs and all of those things, we have feelings of being frustrated or overwhelmed. Well, then you take a lot of our families that we work with, and they have all these other factors going too, right? It's a multifaceted situation where, you know, finances are in play, or Toxic relationships could be in play, or even just trying, which I know a lot of you can relate to, our clients, trying to find a new community, right? So I can't hang out with these people anymore, and now I have to find a new group of people. And so that can result in isolation and all of those things. They have all these factors that they're dealing with and are becoming overwhelmed as they're just trying to take more positive steps to becoming healthy. So I was talking to this volunteer. That was what came up. And I was like, man, we got to talk about SMART goals. We need to talk about SMART goals in a trauma-informed way. And we need to make them more attainable and really just understanding the brain and what our families are going through as we really try to walk alongside of them. So that is the purpose of this training today. I hope it's helpful. So we're working with families in the child welfare system. So next slide. All right, so in this training, we're going to be talking about the role of a CASA volunteer in supporting a family, obstacles and frustrations, which I hope is an opportunity for you all to kind of visit with each other and just to have some community building and discussion. Brain on fire, or trauma brain. We're going to be talking about trauma-informed SMART goals to develop ongoing support of the families that we serve. And we're going to have an opportunity to actually practice these skills together. So. All right, so as a CASA, sometimes you begin over time to develop a relationship with your family. You have someone, a parent who is engaging in services, they're doing really well, they're making some strides forward, and you just want to do more. You start thinking, what can I do to support this family? And we are seeing those families engage, the relationship and rapport is beginning to build with this family. And again, out of that comes this desire of, okay, how can I help? So you want to be able to maintain healthy boundaries while supporting caregivers who are taking steps in recovery. So with SMART goals, it is a little more strategic, and it's a pretty great framework to kind of stem from. And so because of that, it kind of helps you maintain healthy boundaries while walking alongside of them as they're setting goals for future. All right, so we're gonna do something. I'm a former first grade teacher, so sorry, you're gonna have to get up. I'm gonna move around. I'm gonna do some fun things. We are gonna do a think, pair, share, which means we are going to stand up and just find a buddy. I challenge you to find somebody that maybe you don't know, you've never talked to before. And we're going to talk about this first question. For our parents who are engaging in services, what do you see as their biggest obstacle? Okay, so I'm going to let you think about that for a second, and I'll let you get up and find a buddy and take turns sharing. And if you haven't started your CASA journey yet, we have some brand new volunteers in the room. You can talk about what you're anticipating might be some of the biggest obstacles. This is your 30-second warning. We're gonna rotate in a second. All right, if you will stop for one moment, I want you to shuffle again, find another buddy, and answer this second question. As a CASA volunteer, what have been your biggest frustrations when working with families who are participating in services?
Oh, wait, what did, I missed the first part of that.
The first direction was to shuffle again, find a new
Okay,
buddy,
go find a new friend.
new think, pair, share, find a new partner. If you were the overachiever in the room and you already did both questions, you can share with a new buddy. Share with a new buddy. Shuffle, Justin and John.
Dawn or John?
John.
All right, so have you got
No, really. I just had my first meeting with a family about a month ago, so haven't had much time to get fresh.
I think the only time probably these are families that have all participating, so my biggest frustration would be if they're not participating.
Mine was even if they are participating, they're not engaged. It's just they don't know. I'm doing the therapy, I'm doing the home Michael Driver, like, yeah, I'm going to therapy. I'm sitting in a chair. I talk about what I talk about. I need those issues that I never talk about. It's just kind of what me and everybody else is pushing to play. And to me, that's like, if they're actively engaged, that's where it's struggling. Otherwise, if they're engaged, they talk what they got. But when they show up, but then they go to talk about engagement. I went to that in a week. And on paper, that's black and white. It's just whatever taking place there. Yeah, it's like so much more than that. And I try to like qualify it. Like, yes, so that's when it comes
30 seconds.
Yeah. On the hearing and if you're testifying and maybe all kinds of, you don't always get a chance to talk to them, but probably you can do a lot of talk about what everybody said and you have that like hindsight at that point where you get their first but you're not like the person who's there to mind interrupting. I don't mind. I just like if I'm in and like they'll usually just be like go ahead and not let it.
Okay. If you want to find your way back back to your seats. All right, so I just want to hear a little bit of feedback. If you just raise your hand, I'll call on you. Tell me who your buddy was, and then tell me some of the things that you all talked about for question number 1. Our parents who are engaging in services, what do you see as their biggest obstacles? Caroline?
Because relapsing
Yes.
and trying to better themselves with a not so bad. So I think
Yes, not going back to old habits. That's a big one. Yeah. Anything else?
Tammy said transportation. That was, oh man.
Yes, transportation is a huge obstacle. Absolutely. That's a big one. Yeah.
If they are felons, finding a decent job.
Yes. When we have parents that have convicted felonies, it's open like a whole nother can of worms, right? That's so hard. Any other ones? Yes.
Just the overwhelm and the expectation of how many appointments they have to keep and things that they have to do. Like I was saying that I can't imagine like in my own life trying to figure out how to organize all the expectations and appointments that they have to try to figure out, and kind of along with like transportation for that and logistics and
Absolutely. I'm so glad you said that, Jessica. That is such a huge thing. You know, when they have a chance open up, that it is a lot. So, you know, a lot of times part of that is maintaining employment, keeping therapy appointments, you know, all the engagement services that they ask parents to do. It is a lot. And it's great that you recognize that. I think that's such a great thing to build rapport on too. When you are really building, you know, getting in your parents' boat and saying, hey, I realize that this is stressful. This is a stressful situation. Yes.
Also, in the matter, we're talking about a previous, you might have to help me with the fella's name. We were at the CASA office and he was a younger fella. He said he went to Floyd Central, graduated from Floyd Central, but was he DCS? DCS was there as well, but the younger fella is the one that said this.
Spencer Day.
Spencer. So we were kind of talking about how Spencer had brought up, when we go into these homes, we kind of are judging because we have to see what's in the refrigerator. We have to see that things are safe. But like sometimes at my house, my refrigerator is not stocked.
Right.
And that Spencer had said, you know, if we do something wrong, should our children be taken away? And now these parents have messed up, and now here we are coming in. So trying to get them to open up to us, to say, hey, we are on your side. We are just here wanting to help get everything back together. That's something that is really hard.
It's really, really hard. We're going to talk about that. Yes, it's really hard to build a relationship because defenses are up.
Yes.
And so what are the ways that we start breaking those walls down so that we can open up lines of communication for the betterment of the family? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, good. Sounds like you guys got to meet each other too. That's good. Good. That's back. Oh, yeah.
Nope, not working the right way. There we go.
All right, so what is the common denominator that most of our parents share? I think it is.
Lies.
Okay. What's underneath all of that?
trauma.
Trauma, yes. So yes, the majority of our families, there's a lot of substance use disorder. There's mental health issues, all of those things. But the factor that I would say is most prevalent is trauma. I would say very rarely are you going to encounter a parent that doesn't have some. So that goes to our ACEs. So in your folder, you have a little packet here. So raise your hand if you know what ACEs are. All right, most of us should have probably heard of this before. We go over a little bit in national training. So ACEs is adverse childhood experiences. It is based on a study that was done in California in the 1990s. And basically they started studying, comorbidities that adults had, cardiac issues, weight problems, mental health, all of those things, and started discovering that it could be attributed to adverse childhood experiences. And this little handout is, talks about the truth about ACEs. So basically, they break it into 3 categories of abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. If you had abuse in the homes, maybe you witnessed some form of domestic violence. And remember, this isn't about frequency. Even if you witnessed one time, that is a point. So if there was physical abuse in the household, emotional abuse in the household, sexual abuse in the household, those all are worth points. Physical and emotional neglect, those are 2 separate points. And then household dysfunction. If you grew up in a home where one of your primary caregivers struggled with mental illness, you had an incarcerated relative, the mother treated violently, substance abuse, or divorce, all of those attribute to a ACE score. So basically they found the higher the amount of ACEs, the more likely the person was to experience adverse health effects as they developed and grew later in life. On all sorts of mental health difficulties, but also cardiac issues and all sorts of things like that. And if you get to 4 or more, the risk of having adverse physical effects on your body are there. But ACEs does not fully tell the story. So maybe some of you are thinking, gosh, the child that I work with, I used to foster, she was 6. It's high, really high. But that doesn't mean that this child is going to go on to have mental health issues or adverse physical effects on their body as they grow older. The study didn't end there. They found that there were ways to build what? Resilience. Yes. And it comes from investment in relationship. Even one stable, steady adult engaging with a child, or even with an adult who has gone through all this trauma, investing in them can help be almost a counteraction to those adverse childhood experiences. So this is why culturally at CASA, we've begun more to talk about resiliency and not so much of outcome, because sometimes we make recommendations in court and they're not always heard. Right? Or we see something happen that we don't agree with, and we wish it was different. But being able to focus on that we are building resiliency in the life of a child, and sometimes in the life of a family, is the work that really needs to be done. We need a war on trauma. That's what we need. And so you all are ambassadors of that, ambassadors of resiliency. So that's just a little bit about ACEs, and why we're talking about that is because I want to talk a little bit about trauma-informed care. All right, before we get into the trauma-informed care part of it, what do you think if we had the parents of our CASA children complete an ACEs survey, what do you think their average ACE score would be? I guess. Yes. Are people speaking from experience? They're like, oh, I know my parents like way up there. Yeah.
4+.
Yeah. I would agree with that. Unfortunately, we don't have data on this. We would love that every CHINS case that opens that we have parents taking an ACE screener, but that's not happening. But it would be, I think it would be amazing to see the data. And I would affirm that. I would say your guess is probably pretty darn close to being 4 or more. So when I talk about trauma, I talk about brain on fire. And the reason is the effects are really there when someone has had a childhood filled with trauma, or they're continuing to be in a life filled with trauma. So these are just some of the symptoms. They can have nightmares or flashbacks, emotional overwhelm, addictions, decreased concentration, depression, self-destructive behavior, irritability, feeling like things just aren't real. So almost a detachment from reality, loss of sense of self, insomnia, loss of interest, numbing, headaches, shame, feeling hopeless, worthless, chronic pain, anxiety, all of those things. So when we are walking alongside of families, we need to be aware that a lot of our parents have trauma brain. This is what's going on. And we know it's evidence-based that parents and people who live in toxic stress environments, it literally rewires their brain. And we're trying to counteract that. And it's a hard space to be in. And there's no timeline for it. It just takes a lot of time and it's very individualized. So as we move forward, we'll talk about a little bit about trauma-informed care, and then we'll kind of get into goal setting. So as we talk, I want to talk a little bit about the principles of trauma-informed care. I've really highlighted 5 of them that I think are really important. If you are engaging deeply with your parent or their family, you need to make sure that these principles are being enacted. And a lot of them take time because you're building a relationship, right? So just as Tisha said, you have parents who, their defenses are up, their walls are up. They have social workers in and out of their house constantly. They feel like they have something to prove. And because of that, there's a lot of mistrust. So the first principle of trauma-informed care is to create safety. We are going to create a culturally, emotionally, and physically safe space for the parent. And we do that a lot in just attitude, our mannerisms, the way that we speak to them. And then we're paying attention to their cues, right? If you are sitting across from a parent who's, maybe rubbing their palms of their hands on their jeans, and they're kind of, looking everywhere, or maybe you notice that they're sweating a little bit. All of those are signs that your parent that you're working with in trauma brain, right? We call that amygdala hijack. They are not thinking about what you're saying. They are just all in survival brain, and that's it. Whatever you're saying, it's out, it's gone. So we want to create a safe space. So that means we do that through communication. If you're in an environment with someone explaining, I know it sounds silly, but where the bathrooms are, where an exit is, never block an exit of somebody who is in crisis or trauma. Just little things like that. We're paying really a lot of attention to the cues that these parents are giving us and how we're proceeding in our relationship. Next is trust and transparency. We want to try to provide details up front of who we are, what we do, and scheduling. So we want to explain our role as a CASA. I'm here to, be a voice for your child. I'm an advocate for your child. However, I'm really interested in getting to know you and help provide you with resources as well. So explaining what we do, what our role is, and then also when we're going to come by, that's respect. Now, the difference is we do have parents who are in trial home visits and things like that. We like to do the pop-in, right? Because we want to make sure what's going on when, not when a social worker's not there constantly. But you can let them know that, hey, you've moved to a child home visit, so that means sometimes I'm going to be coming and I might not give you a warning. And just even explaining that is is cultivating trust and showing that transparency. Next is choice. We are treating parents with dignity by respecting which way they want to go and listening to them without judgment. So sometimes that means that we're just doing that active listening and we're just nodding our heads, right? Letting them share. That is really important. And then as we go on to talk about SMART goals, you're there as a guide, but remember respecting that they are their own individual and they there's some form of goal there. We want to help them form that, but we don't want to be directive in that. We want to just, again, walk alongside of them and give them that choice. The other one is respect and mutuality. Healing happens within safe relationships of mutual respect. So the whole thing is just we are communicating dignity And that feeds right into that safety. You know, healing happens within that safe relationship. If you're not safe, healing's not going to take place, and we can't even kind of get to respect and mutuality. So if you have a parent that's being really transparent with you, sharing, you want to listen and really try to listen as much as you can without judgment and just showing them respect. And then the other one I want to go over is empowerment. So everyone has strengths. Let's discover them, grow them, and build a healthy life. We all know parents that have been difficult. At CASA, there is a parent who's just kind of he's just been tough. I don't know how another way to say it. But we realize that there are some strengths there. There's some tenacity and there is a desire, right? There's some form of desire. Sometimes it doesn't, funnel in healthy ways, but it's there. So we want to empower them. And the same thing is with setting those SMART goals of we want to empower them. We're going to give them the model and then give them the tools that they need to implement the strategy of moving forward. So I know I'm going to go over and I'm just going to be okay with it. I want to let Courtney come up because she has just some storytelling of a relationship that she's built with a mom. And I want you to kind of listen to her about and see how she's kind of implementing some of those trauma-informed strategies. And you'll hear it come out just in the storytelling. So she's built a lot of relational capital with this mom over time.
Hello, I'm Courtney Roberts, if you know me, that's me. Hi. I was just talking to Laura when we were talking about this. I do have a few moms that we've kind of built relationships, but one in particular, when I started on her case as a case coordinator, she, the director previously had basically put me as her CASA to get the TPR. Like that was the goal. Like you're going to go in and you're going to testify and just solidify this TPR. And so I went to my first CFTM with her. At that point, her case was already 1.5 years long. So that is, quite a while to not really be at that point. She wasn't even having unsupervised visits. So it probably sounded like, especially on paper, that was the route to take. So I went to that first CFTM and I listened to her talk and I heard her talk about her trauma and then the barriers to her progressing in her case. Like her work schedule was crazy. So she couldn't even her kids were placed in Indianapolis. That was the foster home that they had for them. And she lived down here. So she couldn't get time to have those unsupervised visits. They wanted her to have weekend visits. Well, she worked every weekend. She had overtime. She worked third shift. And just getting all of that to work out, she couldn't do it. And she's kind of at the standstill. Like if you don't increase your visits, then you can't reunify because you're not showing us that you can take care of your kids. And she didn't have a car. She didn't even have a legal driver's license. So she couldn't meet halfway to go and get them. There were just a lot of issues. But hearing her talk, I thought, she wants this. I think she just didn't understand how to get there. So I'm like, know that I can say, okay, let's TPR on her children. Plus her children are telling me they love mom. They want to live with mom. They can't wait to get back to mom. So taking all that together, I'm like, okay, how do I make this work? So I, at the first meeting was like, okay, let's see if we can talk to your employer. I know they mandate weekend overtime. Maybe we can get them to, if I approach them instead of you and say, can she have at least one Saturday a month off? She's got this case going on. I asked her if it was okay if I discussed that with her employer, and she's like, yeah. So I wrote her a letter on letterhead. I went and spoke with her employer and said, we're really dealing with this. This is a struggle for her. And so maybe she can have one Saturday a month off so she can have these visits with her kids. And that kind of opened up her seeing me as trying to help her solve a problem instead of just saying, here's your problem, solve it, and you can reunify. And so from that point on, she would kind of reach out to me
also from that point on, she had 3 different FCMs before her case was over. Because they leave a lot. And so as things kind of progressed, she ended up being able to join Hope Court. She relapsed actually after that, and then got sober again. And through the course of like every bump, she would call me. Sometimes I would wish she would have called me. Like she would call me and tell me like some things that she really screwed up, and I'm kind of like, oh, okay, great. But she would call, like almost like her first phone call, like, okay, I did this. Now what do I do? And so when she had a bad relapse, it had been probably another year after I had gotten the case that she had kind of a bad weekend, and she called me and she told me about it. And I said, okay, I said, honestly, this would equal termination, right? Because now we're like 2.5 years into your case, and you fell off again, and your kids still aren't even coming to you every weekend. Is this what you want? Do you want, if it's okay, if you want to say like, I just want to visit with my kids, but I don't want them to come live with me because I don't think I can physically do it, say that, like, that's okay. Just tell me what you want, we'll go with it. So she thought about it. She really did think about it, because I think part of her was like, is it even in their best interest to come to me? Because I don't know if I can do it. And then she pulled it together and she's like, all right, I want them to come back. I'm their mom. This is where they should be. I'm going to do it. And she hit it hard and worked hard and wasn't perfect, and did have some moments where we had to have conversations where I'm like, that's neglect. That's not a good idea. And I feel like she trusted me a little bit more because I've always been honest with her. And I've told her that, you might bring something to me. I have to at that point tell you what my advocacy is going to look like. Am I going to go into court and say, she's a great friend and I just really like her and she loves her kids? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe I'm gonna have to go to court and say, she really loves her kids, and because of that, she's willing to maybe not reunify right now. I like to just tell them like straight up, I'm gonna tell you the truth. You're going to bring your concerns to me, and I'm going to hear all the bad and all the good, and I'm always going to tell you the truth. So if I'm advocating for you to reunify, I'm gonna tell you that. But if I'm also gonna go to court and say, you know what, I don't think reunification is best, I want you to know that before we're standing before the judge and you have all those tensions going on and it's really difficult. And I think that I've had multiple parents that kind of respect, they don't like what I'm telling them. Like, I'm going to say that we need a TPR and they don't love it. But I've had a lot of them say, I don't like what you're telling me, but I like the fact that you're being honest, or that you're holding me accountable, or that, you're there. So her case did close with reunification. She has her kids back. Things are okay. After case closure, she gave me a call a few weeks ago, told me she kind of screwed up. She relapsed again. She was telling me all about it. I said, okay. I said, tell me what you have to tell me. And she stopped. I said, I'm going to tell you my opinion now. And, you can't decide that you're able to, alcohol is her drug of choice. So you can't decide you can go out and drink unless you can go out and drink and not catch charges. And literally you can't, because she just did it again. And why are you going out drinking when you have kids at home that you should be taking care of? And just and she's not going to make that phone call to me knowing I'm going to give that back to her unless she wants it. And if she doesn't feel like, she probably call her FCM and say, hey, by the way, it's just, it's good to just see them where they are, but then let them know, like, I see you where you are. That doesn't make you a bad mom. It doesn't make you a bad person. I know you love your kids. You're struggling. Let me struggle with you or help you. Just tell me what you need me to do for you. And one of my biggest, I learned this from, she was a visit supervisor. She had been a foster parent previously. And one time she told me she was having struggles with one of her cases. The FCM was really just counting mom out and not supporting the mom the way that this visit supervisor felt like she should. And she made this statement to me, and it was kind of like set with me for a long time. She said that when she was a foster parent and the kids that she fostered had grown, and they had come back to her at one point and thanked her for loving their mom. And she said that the kids said to her, you supported us and you showed us you loved us by loving our mom, because that's what we needed. So when I think about that, like, I'll support the parents because that's how I support the kids, especially the ones that want to reunify. it doesn't fit for all cases. Some cases, you know, that's not going to be the best goal, but when it does, and you've got kids that's what they want, that's the best way to love them and to support them is to support their parents' side of it. So
What, can you go back to the trauma informed? What principles do you see Courtney implementing in this instance? Trust. Yes.
Respect.
Yeah. Yeah. Safety. Yeah.
Empowerment.
Yes, empowerment, absolutely. So just by, again, healing happens in those safe relationships, and she was able to cultivate that relationship, and that's when you can really get to these other things, and you can get to the hard things that these parents are going through and being able to walk alongside of them. Okay, so here's our SMART goals. In our packet is a little handout with SMART goals. We'll practice and we'll make this part probably pretty quick. But SMART goals stand for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So it is an acronym that is helpful, and because of its specificity, I think it really helps, just kind of have a good framework for our parents, where goal setting might be completely foreign for them. So the great thing about SMART goals is it can diffuse feelings of being overwhelmed. So just like Tisha mentioned, when a case opens, you meet with your parent and you see that they're just kind of like deer in headlights, total trauma brain. They're like, what am I even going to do? Where do I even begin? Where SMART goals really emphasizes kind of doing things small and one at a time. And while and kind of taking out that whole idea of we have to do everything at once. Let's break it down. Let's take this slow and, be able to kind of be more successful. So the great thing about it is it sets those smaller goals, makes them more attainable. It equips the parent. So you're giving them a framework where you're empowering the parent to come up with what they want to address first and how they're going to get there. And then it's reproducible for big results. You can pretty much apply SMART goals to anything in your life. It doesn't have to be in relation to trauma or I want to stop using drugs or something like that. It can be really small, just like I want to drink more water, that we can make into a SMART goal. And then just a reminder that if you don't succeed, keep trying. Parents may be reluctant to try setting goals. And that's part of just a defense mechanism, coping mechanism. And read those cues if they're giving those to you. Don't press forward. But it's something that you might want to address again, going forward. Give them some time and then move forward. So when you are talking to parents, you might say, hey, well, let's set a goal for the next week or the next 2 weeks or the next month from when I'm going to see you. And you might get these big kind of pie in the sky goals, like I want to get my kids back. Well, that's a great goal, and I certainly understand that, but let's boil that down a little bit. Let's make that a little more specific, a little bit more attainable, because as we all know, you're not going to get your kids back next week, right? It's just not going to happen that way. Buying a car, okay, great goal, but again, let's work on making that more specific. What do we want to do? How are we going to track that progress? So for a car, maybe I'm starting to set a goal with a parent of I'm going to save $50 a week for the next month. See where I'm at, because my big goal is to buy a car. So you want to make it attainable. How are you going to do it? It needs to be relevant. Is it relevant to their life right now? How is it going to better them, help them? And then always putting a time frame of some sort on it. Timely, when do I want to do it? And by this certain time. So we're gonna role play. Brittany and I are going to role play real quick of what a SMART goal might look like when we're working with parents. So this is just a little bit of a rundown that I just went over, and you get to watch us do it. Hi, Courtney. I just have really been struggling because I go and I hang out with this guy named Jason. And we, even before the kids were removed, we just used together, like we always, we spoke together. And so I've started to realize that when I'm over there for like late at night, it just goes downhill. Like it makes me want to use. And then there's always this girl, Teresa, around too, like at night that goes over there and smokes. And I don't like her. We've exchanged words before in the past and it isn't good. And so, yeah, I don't know what to do about that. How do I stop?
Well, do you think that you need to not go over there at all or not be over there at night? What do you think would help you with this situation?
I think that for now, like I've known Jason since I was in high school and we've been friends for a really long time, and I just like him as a person. But maybe if I just didn't go over there at night anymore, maybe if I decided like after 8:30, I just need to leave.
I mean, I think you know yourself, you know what your triggers are. So if you want to set a goal of trying to leave by 8:30, then you need to be ready. So set that goal, set a SMART goal. So you're going to leave at 8:30. So how do you think that you're going to make that work? How are you going to set that goal?
I think that I could set an alarm on my phone when I'm over there, and then I would leave by 8:30. And then I would just be out of there.
So when you decide that you're ready to leave, are you able to just leave? Does it take you a little while to say goodbye to everybody? People try to talk you into staying. What does that look like?
They always try to talk me insane, and it takes a long time for me to get out there.
So I would say if your goal is to leave at 8:30, maybe set your alarm for 8:15. Start saying your goodbyes so that you're not running into, oh, it's going to leave at 8:30, didn't leave until 9 because everybody was like dragging me down. That way you're not sliding on your goal.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. The other thing too about it is that I like being over there, so it's really hard for me to leave. So I feel like I need to like treat myself, well, not to meth, but treat myself when I am able to like leave.
Okay, so you have a goal of wanting to be out of there by 8:30, and then I think that you need to set up a time, like how many days or weeks do you want to succeed at that goal before you feel like you should reward yourself?
I think I want to start maybe small and just see if I can try it for like a week. And, maybe 4 out of 5 times that I'm over there that I'm able to leave.
Okay, so now you have your goal. You're going to measure it. What do you think would be an appropriate reward for that?
I like Starburst.
I would probably ask you if Starburst is like some like street term for a drug, just to be clear, before I'm like, go for it, but that's just me. Yeah.
Yeah, I like candy, so like maybe I'm trying to watch my finances, but I think if I am able to get through the week with not, staying late, then we can all Starbucks.
All right, so you've got your goal, how long it's going to be measured, and your reward. So why is it important? You need to make make sure that you keep reminding yourself, why am I keeping this goal? Like, don't let them talk you out of it. Don't let
Ain't
them,
nothing good happens at that house after that.
okay? Great. So that is the importance of it, right? So I think that you're in good terms. Would you like me to help hold you accountable to your goal? I can check in with you and come pick you up at 8:30 and be like, "Hey, it's time, let's go."
I'll like that. Yeah, when we meet next week, can you ask me about this? All right. So, in your packet, I've also included a chart. I know it sounds silly, but these work for kids. And you know what? Ultimately, we're not that different from kids. We all need a reward system. It's why there's cheat days on diets and all that stuff, right? So this is just an example of even if you had a client or a parent that was wanting a little chart where it's like, oh, every time I leave Jason's, I'm gonna put an X, and once I have 5 X's, then I'm gonna reward myself. Then that could work. So next, I'm gonna have you work at your tables to model this. It does not have to be, I want you to be able to do it personally. So if you can think of a SMART goal, you can talk amongst yourselves and just ask for feedback as you're developing a SMART goal for yourself. But I want you to practice. And then all of these materials, if you ever wanted it in written form for sure while you're working with someone, feel free to reach out to us and we'll make sure that you get a little worksheet or anything like that. But again, focusing on the small things and yeah, I'll go to the, so just things to remember when you're doing SMART goals with your parents. Begin with the end in mind and you practice gradual release, which is what we just did, right? So I'm doing it, then we do it together, and then eventually you release your parent to do it themselves, right? Where it becomes a new strategy of this is a big pie in the sky goal, but these are the things that I'm going to start working on to make it possible. And then always remember our trauma-informed question is not what is wrong with you, but what happened to you. It's such an important thing. I did an exit interview with a volunteer on Friday, and she said, when I asked her, what did she gain from this experience of volunteering with CASA? And she said, I realized how much trauma affects people. And because of that, it's helped me lower my expectations of some things because I'm able to kind of just see where they're going through. And I know what happened to my parent, right? And I know what my child has gone through, what happened to them, not what's wrong with them, but what happened to them. And then again, that safety thing is huge. Are they safe? If safety isn't there, the brain cannot learn a new skill. As teachers, I know that you see this all the time when you have a child who is experiencing trauma brain and then you're trying to teach them how to read, forget it. You got to get to the heart of the matter first in order for them to learn something new. And it's the same thing with our parents. So safety is number one, and that is building that rapport and that relational capital. And then redefine the win. There is no timeline to trauma healing. The small goals met and the simple, I used to do that, but now I don't anymore, that's a win. So for the role play we just did, we have a parent who, if she's able to leave a house where she used to do drugs 4 out of 5 times in the 1 or 2 week session, 2 week span, and even if she goes back and then is able to do it again, and you kind of have this 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, right? You're making progress. When you see somebody tell you, and we have a great volunteer right now who is going through this with her parent, and I'm like, look at where she was and look at where she is now. And she's able to say in so many things, I used to do that, but I do not do it anymore. That's huge. So I'm going to release you guys to practice. And I think I've gone over. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and release us for lunch, but please, I encourage you to write a SMART goal before you leave here today. And there are sandwiches in the back. Hold on, because I can tell you what's in them. So, and then today we had a lunch sponsor. So, Graceland Church sent their executive team over a couple of weeks